Good evening, my friends, and welcome to Phantasmal Poppy's Spooky True Saturdays. We've had an unseasonable amount of storms lately. Yesterday, while we were having one of the hardest downpours in a month, a right gully washer, as some would say, my neighbors were setting off fireworks. How they managed to do so without drowning in their yard, I don't know. Nor do I have any idea how they managed to even light the blasted things. But hey, stormy weather brings on bizarre behavior now and then, including in tonight's story. Now gather round, my friends, and listen well to Escaping the Storm. This story happened a few months after I moved to the Midwest. Having seen what lightning can do to cattle, trees, and nearly myself, I prefer to be as close as possible to shelter I can hunker down in before a storm hits. This was especially true when I first moved here, because storms up here are so much louder than back in the mountains. I still play the game of, was that rain or small hail, whenever the sky breaks loose around here. But back then, the weather made me a lot more nervous, so I liked to be back in my complex around my neighbors and roommates that were natives to the area, and could tell whether it was mild or if worse was on the way, such as a tornado. I managed to make it into the apartment as the sky was severely darkening. When I got home, my then best friend and K-Witch, my neighbor who has been the subject of several previous videos, were sitting on the porch and chatting as K-Witch had miraculously managed to get her children down from bed early for once. And my best friend's husband was in his office doing a speedrun of a video game. I decided I would hop in the shower and get that out of the way before lightning started striking nearby. When I got out, I noticed the sounds in the office, which could be heard through the bathroom wall, had stopped, so I figured that my roommate had joined the ladies outside. Since I figured that nobody's gonna be out there but the 3 of the 4 people in the state who have seen me with horrendous bad hair, I can just walk outside in my wet, unfixed hair and jammies. Ain't nobody gonna care. Imagine my surprise when I slung open the patio doors wearing the baggiest pajamas known to man, and a huge dopey grin on my face because I sure am ready to chit-chat, only to see some lady I've never seen before crouching down on the patio, smoking a cigarette. Strangers weren't exactly uncommon, since I myself was a stranger in the area, and at first glance I thought it was somebody one of my roomies or neighbors knew. The lady had a carrier with her with a baby bundled up in pink. I went, "Aw, who's the youngin'?" Because I'm already looking like I just rolled out of bed, so I may as well detract from my first impression being that of an overgrown college kid. Immediately, I realized my tone, and being a quintessential herpaderp, was not exactly appropriate for the situation. K-Witch and both my roomies turned to me with concerned, serious looks on their faces. Oh, I realized. There's something going down here, and it don't look pretty. At this point, I noticed that K-Witch's husband has joined the party, and they've all circled around this lady here. My best friend, whose knees were really bad, had scooted her chair extremely close to her, while K-Witch was hunkered down beside the stranger and baby. The woman was speaking softly with K-Witch, who was trying to soothe her, when I caught Speedrunner's eyes, and he kinda crinkled his eyebrows down a bit, his way of covertly nodding without actually nodding. I stepped over, and he whispered a rundown of what was going on. Nobody actually knew who the woman was. Speedrunner had stepped outside to smoke with his wife when he noticed a car was sort of circling the area. The third time it came through, it swiftly pulled up to the curb, and this lady hopped out and bolted toward them. which is very alarming considering 2 people on that patio were former military and get a little freaked out when strangers just start running after them. She got a little way into the yard and yelled if they knew where she was. At first, they thought she might have been a meth head from how skinny she was, but they quickly realized she wasn't exactly dressed like a drug addict, even though she looked like she had gotten into a fight. One of her tank top straps had been yanked on hard enough that it had been stretched out and was half slipping over her shoulder. Once K-Witch realized that the stranger was on the verge of a panic attack and got her onto the porch, they found more signs of a scuffle. By the time I came out onto the porch, I could see the darkening of a fresh ring around her right eye, though the yellowed rings beneath it showed it was one of several. And she was showing out some large fingerprint-sized bruises on her upper left arm, where she had clearly been grabbed. I don't recall exactly what the whole story was, but the woman had been in a highly abusive relationship with her baby's father. Something had happened where he got rough with the baby, and when she tried to stop him, he hit her and dragged her across the room by her arm. I want to think she managed to calm him down and somehow convinced him to let her go out and get him more cigarettes because he was too drunk to drive or whatever, and he bought it. The moment she got in her vehicle with the baby, she floored it and kept driving, finally heading off the main roads in search of shelter as she ran into part of a storm. By the time I came out of the apartment, K-Witch and my bestie had her mostly calmed down enough to find out just how she had bolted with only the clothes on her backs. Amazingly, throughout her mother's whole mad dash to save their lives, the baby girl had remained asleep. Now, I'm no mother, but I've had to deal with abusive relatives before, and I've helped others get out of abusive situations. So as I'm looking at this woman who's just had the hell beat out of her but somehow managed to push terror aside long enough to get out, my hackles are raising. Is it possible this guy followed her? My roommates have gone stone-faced, so I know they've gone into war mode and are mentally preparing the next best course of action. Fortunately, the woman said there was no way the man could have known where she was, and in fact, she had gotten so turned around and wasn't quite where she was either. Thankfully, as wild as the drive had been, the woman had enough time to plot out a course of action. I caught bits and pieces about her having gotten in contact with a coworker or a former coworker where she could stay and get her bearings, and that was pretty much where she was headed once she calmed down long enough for the directions to make sense. None of us really had much on us, but we all pulled together a few dollars in whatever pocket change we had lying around to give her. My bestie grabbed her a few quick snacks and something to drink, and since I really didn't have much else to contribute that everyone else hadn't already taken care of, I gave her a handful of packets of some high energy and relaxation tea blends. Kinda silly perhaps, but even the slightest comforts like that can be a sanity saver in times like that. Once this lady got through venting to these complete strangers, K-Witch and my bestie helped her get the baby buckled back in and spared a few more kind words before she was gone. Meanwhile, the guys and I are mumbling about the brief description of her boyfriend and his vehicle that she gave us, and what we should do if she was wrong about him being able to track her back to where she had stopped. Thankfully, if he had been able to track her, we never heard hide nor hair of him. The last I ever saw or heard from that lady, she was pulling away from the curb, heading out trying to beat the storm, both the one brewing overhead and the one she had just escaped. Storm Lady, if you're hearing this, just know I hope you managed to completely cut the bastard who hurt you out of your life. Whatever his excuses were, I hope you were able to keep your head above water and not give back in to the threats, coercion, or other manipulative tactics and went back. Nobody, be they male, female, or any range of the gender spectrum should ever have to put up with abuse from anyone, especially a love interest. It's been 3 years, so I hope those years were a lot kinder to you and your kid than they were that night when you made a mad dash up to our patio. Well, my friends, that's all for now. Not the creepiest story, but it definitely was bizarre. If you enjoyed this story, please like, share, and subscribe. Hit the notification bell too, that way you can catch your latest spooky fix the moment it comes out. And check out my Patreon page at patreon.com/Phantasmal Poppy. Thank you. Good night. And see you all real soon.